Right after the 2025 regular season, both the San Francisco Giants and Minnesota Twins made surprising moves, firing Bob Melvin and Rocco Baldelli, even after exercising their 2026 options. On the surface, it looked like baseball logic. Fresh direction after disappointing seasons. But the real story isn't about lineups or dugout decisions. It's about the money trail these choices leave behind. Here's my challenge to you as a fan or future sports executive. The next time you see a manager fired, don't just ask if the team will win more games. Ask if attendance will really rise, if sponsors will pull back, or if hidden contract terms will quietly drain millions from the operating budget. By the end of this video, you'll see that these firings are less about the scoreboard and more about contracts, revenue, and perception. And that starts with a hidden bill few people even realize exists. When a team decides to fire its manager, the story doesn't end with a simple payout. On paper, it might look straightforward. Pay the remaining salary and move on. But the reality is layered. The severance itself is usually modest compared to overall team revenues, yet it triggers a chain reaction of financial obligations that add up well beyond the first check everyone thinks about. For starters, managers typically operate under guaranteed contracts. If a club has exercised an option year like the San Francisco Giants did in July when they picked up Bob Melvin's deal for 2026, cutting ties after the 2025 season could mean absorbing that additional salary without any of the on-field benefit. The Minnesota Twins faced an almost identical situation with Rocco Baldelli, picking up his 2026 option before showing him the door. Moves like these don't just close one chapter, they create immediate payouts for unused seasons while simultaneously opening the need for a new manager and staff. And that's where the bill grows. Hiring a replacement doesn't mean just one new contract. Managers often assemble assistant coaches and analysts they trust, bringing with them clusters of salaries and support staff costs. These dollars may not hinge on perks or bonuses, but on the straightforward reality that replacing a coaching staff multiplies payroll responsibilities. A club can find itself paying off old commitments and bankrolling an entirely new leadership team at the same time. What about the revenue side? Research suggests there is sometimes a brief emotional reaction. Attendance can tick up in the short window after a firing. Fans show curiosity, the story makes headlines, and people turn out to see what happens next. But when researchers model longer-term attendance, there's little consistent evidence that a new manager moves the needle into the following season. In other words, the new hire bounce is more of a marketing signal than a sustainable business model. Another wrinkle is transparency. Unlike player contracts, which are widely reported, manager salaries and incentives are rarely disclosed in a consistent way. Comprehensive lists of what managers actually make, or how much clubs are obligated to pay after a dismissal, are hard to come by. That lack of clarity makes it easy for teams to roll managerial changes into the blur of overall expenses, leaving outsiders to guess just how much the move really cost. All of this illustrates why the math around firing a manager is never simple. The severance line might be manageable, but the layered obligations, payouts for unused years, costs of new staff, faint attendance pops that fade quickly, make it a financial decision that extends far beyond the dugout. The dollars alone don't justify the move, which raises the bigger question. If it's not just about math or measurable returns, what are owners really trying to accomplish? Sometimes it's less about solving problems and more about redirecting blame. Imagine blaming the chef when the restaurant's ingredients arrive spoiled. Baseball often works the same way. When a roster falls short, attention doesn't turn to ownership, scouting, or player development. It lands on the manager in the dugout. That role is the most visible, the easiest to criticize, and the most symbolic lever a franchise can pull when pressure builds from outside. Fans expect accountability, and the media amplifies that demand by spotlighting the individual in uniform rather than the structural flaws weighing down the roster. The problem is that firing a manager rarely produces the turnaround people assume. Research tracking clubs through managerial changes shows no consistent, sustained improvement right after a dismissal. In fact, one study found that rookie managers often underperform expectations in their first full season, though that effect largely fades by the second year. The point is clear: a bullpen lacking depth or a lineup without power hitters can't be fixed through different words in the clubhouse. Because managerial choices, pinch hitters, defensive shifts, pitching changes play out publicly, they create the illusion that outcomes hinge on those decisions. But the underlying reality is that player talent talent drives results far more than a change in leadership style. That illusion feeds what scholars describe as the scapegoat function of these firings. Dismissing the manager becomes a symbolic act, less about shaping future wins and more about signaling responsiveness. When a team stumbles, ownership needs a narrative it can present to season ticket holders, the press, and casual fans. Removing the manager provides that narrative. It communicates, "We are serious, we are listening." Whether the replacement offers a meaningful tactical edge is often secondary. The firing itself serves as the public gesture. Take Rocco Baldelli as a recent case. He left Minnesota with a $527.5 record, 3 AL Central titles, and a contract set through 2026 after the club picked up his option. Yet following a 70-92 season in 2025, he was dismissed. On paper, his record reflected competence and past success. But when restless fans and media pushed for accountability, the optics of a fresh start outweighed the details of his track record. His departure illustrated how firings are frequently less about standings and more about pressure, signaling, and the perception of action. For ownership, the benefit of that strategy is obvious. By putting the spotlight on the dugout, they redirect scrutiny away from bigger issues, ineffective front office decisions, poor roster construction, or long-term development setbacks. It reframes the conversation into one of leadership change rather than systemic flaws, and it buys time while fans re-engage with the promise that things will be different. And that strategy ripples outward, shaping an unusual labor market for managers themselves. Some command multi-million-dollar contracts despite modest records, while others are cycled through quickly at lower pay. What explains that uneven marketplace? That's where the business side of managing and the strange way salaries are set comes into focus. Why do some MLB managers collect multi-million-dollar salaries, even when their records look average? Fans often believe pay should mirror performance, wins, playoff trips, maybe even attendance boosts. But studies examining salary, winning percentage, postseason appearances, and attendance make one thing clear: how much a manager earns today tells you little about how many games his team will win this year, or whether the stands will stay full. In other words, salary doesn't buy results on the field. So what does drive the market? Reputation, history, and perception. A manager's past achievements, whether a playoff run from years earlier or the esteem of colleagues in the sport, tend to matter more than what his current roster produces. Media presence or the ability to reassure fans can tilt the scales too. These intangibles may sound odd in a results-driven business, but in baseball they carry serious weight. One of the clearest distinctions emerges between rookie managers and veterans. Rookies typically enter with shorter contracts and modest paychecks. Teams frame them as low-cost experiments, less risky financially if things don't work out. Veteran managers, by contrast, often land bigger deals and longer terms from the outset, even if their recent success isn't impressive. The difference is stark. Research shows non-rookie hires bring in salaries well over 100% higher than rookies right away. Owners see experience as insurance, public credibility that carries value beyond the win column. Prestige signals like awards add another layer. Recognition from Manager of the Year voting, even finishing among the top 5, correlates strongly with increased pay in the seasons that follow. Importantly, that boost doesn't come because it guarantees more victories. The award creates leverage by reinforcing a manager's brand as a proven leader. It's a stamp that executives and owners believe helps reassure stakeholders, regardless of whether circumstances that led to the award remain in place. Connections inside baseball add to how the market operates, though not always through higher salaries. In some cases, networks and long-standing relationships open doors and provide opportunities rather than outright salary premiums. The closed nature of the industry means trust and familiarity still shape career prospects, even if they don't directly inflate pay. This way of setting salaries highlights the true function of the managerial market. Pay isn't designed to secure more wins, it's designed to project stability, credibility, and authority. A marquee name on the dugout steps tells fans and sponsors that ownership is serious about direction, even if the numbers say otherwise. And when you step back, that gap between perception and reality circles us back to the underlying point. The money spent on managers rarely guarantees on-field change. It buys image, reassurance, and time. Which brings us to the heart of the story. When teams choose to make these expensive moves, they aren't really solving strategy inside the lines. In baseball, firing a manager is less about tactical fixes and more about how the franchise wants to be seen. It's a signal to fans that leadership is taking action, even even though research shows immediate performance improvements are inconsistent. The real financial weight rests in paying out contracts and funding new staff, all while shaping public perception of accountability and commitment. So next time you see a headline about a manager on the hot seat, look past the box score and ask what message ownership is trying to sell. And tell me in the comments, were the Giants and Twins' recent choices sound business or not? Don't forget to subscribe for more sports business breakdowns.